Hello, welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I am IndyStar's Colts editor Nat Newell here, of course, with our Colts insider Joel A. Erickson. And we need everybody to like and subscribe. Joel, what do we want them to do?
Like and subscribe. It's
There we
very
go.
important.
We got to have newspaper reporters do not like to ask for, praise. So we're trying to train them.
Well, the biggest thing is like the end of "Don't Look Up" after the world has ended or whatever. They've got Jonah Hill saying like and subscribe as he puts his video out, and that's stuck in my head. That's my big issue with it. Is like this is a thing that like is being made fun of in pop culture, and now we have to say it.
Yeah. It speaks well. I think the journalists don't have a hard time wrapping their mind around it, but it is what we need to do to survive. So that's what we're going to do. Obviously, Colts opens Sunday, 1:00 against the Dolphins. Let's start. We'll certainly talk about the Dolphins. We got a couple questions to answer as well.
I think we should start with the first question, or at least what I think is the first question.
Is that the athletic poll?
Yes.
Well, we can do that.
With the hopeful thing. I think that's an interesting question from Rambo 25. Basically, he saw that there was a listing of the hopeful fan bases coming into this NFL season, and dead last at 32% or 32 with 7% hopeful. They had the Indianapolis Colts. He said he doesn't live in Indianapolis. He's a New Jersey guy, North Jersey guy. He's got a higher expectation of the Colts this season. I think that actually matches with what we've seen, just what Nat and I have seen from the fan base as we look at our, we know how many people are reading the stories I write. We know how many people are reading Colts stories in general. I think that generally fits with that, and I think the reason that they're not as hopeful is just it's the simplest thing in football. They don't have a quarterback situation that's settled, and for better or worse in the NFL, you kind of need to have a quarterback to have hope. I would say even the San Francisco 49ers, who are kind of the team that people always throw up as like, this is a team that doesn't necessarily have to have the quarterback. I think even I have a friend who's a huge San Francisco 49ers fan, and I can tell you that his hope is pretty tied to whether or not they have the quarterback or they sign the quarterback or who's going to be quarterback next year. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's just Colts fans don't see where this is headed in the future. And it's hard to see where this is headed in the future. And it kind of looks right now like it's going to go get worse before it gets better. So that's why I think that they're at that 7% hopeful range.
It is an interesting thought. The Colts are not the 32nd most they're not the least hopeful team in the NFL. They're fairly low on the list, but they're not 32nd. But how much of that is also the history here, where not only is the quarterback what matters, but you went from Peyton Manning to basically Andrew Luck, and then obviously the rug got pulled out from everybody, and so everybody knows what quarterback play is, and we don't have it with the Colts this year. So I imagine that's part of it too.
Yeah, it's a fan base that wants the Colts fan base is in a spot that's a little bit different right now, and that spot is this is a organization where the fan base is used to being in the playoffs. I think most of the fan base is either was there before the Peyton Manning era or came to the Colts during the Peyton Manning era and were used to that. They had Andrew Luck for a while, and they haven't really bottomed out. They bottomed out. Like 2022 was a bottom out. 2017 was a bottom out, but they haven't bottomed out in the way where the team is terrible just for multiple, like for a 5-year cycle. It's like a Jaguars bottom out, a Cleveland Browns bottom out. Like when they bottom out, they get bad for years and years and years. Colts fans haven't had that, so they've been close to the playoffs, and they still feel like what the playoffs were and where the organization should be. And that's just, I get it. I get where Colts fans are. I think that's why there's maybe a little bit less interest, is because this is a fan base that was raised to expect the playoffs and AFC South titles and stuff like that, and they haven't gotten it.
And I also think it hasn't been a great situation in terms of how they got here either. At times, it seems like they've made some poor decisions that you could sort of see coming. They held off on a quarterback, and we talked a lot about that last week, and how many they didn't have a lot of great options, and then they did pick the quarterback, and they were all in on him, and it seems like it's gone wrong since they named him the starter after a single preseason game, and I'm sure that contributes to it as well.
Yeah. It's. I think there's, oddly enough, those teams that are way at the bottom kind of go through hope cycles. Like where those teams that are always at the bottom that never ever do anything, like they have first pick a lot, or they have a new quarterback a lot, or they have a new coach a lot. So there's all of this, there's these chances to hope that where the place the Colts have been, where they're kind of sitting around the edge of the playoff race, and it feels like they don't have a quarterback, they're not going to have the pick to get one. Chris Ballard's been here for a long time, so that it doesn't feel like change. All of that, I think, contributes to a fan base that's kind of like, we need them to do something. We need them to do something one way or the other, good or bad. We either need them in the playoffs or winning the division, or we need change to really get invested in this the way we have been in the past.
And if you want hope, Rambo 25, this is Steichen had him literally one play from winning the division with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. I'm not saying they would have gone anywhere in the playoffs, but hey, they would have made the playoffs one play away. And I think they got some interesting players this year. It's just, so I think you're justified in being more than 32nd most hopeful fan base, but I do think it's less hopeful than a lot of places. You want to talk about defense, Xavier Howard, let's start there. They've really remade the cornerbacks on the fly. What's the story behind that?
They haven't said this outright, but it's something that we know from talking to Cincinnati people. Lou Anarumo does not like inexperience at corner. He's not necessarily a guy. They last year, the Bengals realized that their guys were getting old. You've seen, Mike Hilton got cut by the Colts this year. He was one of their big guys. He got cut by the Dolphins. Sorry, cut by the Dolphins earlier this year. Colts worked him out, didn't sign him. That's a guy who has. That's a guy who's was one of their bedrock players, and they were rotating him down the stretch. Like he wasn't ready to play, and they drafted some guys. They brought in some young guys. Anarumo didn't want to play him. I think that's what's going on here. Lou Anarumo's scheme is very complex. It's very difficult to learn. I know that from talking to players and from talking to people behind the scenes. And I think that Anarumo is just more comfortable with veteran players. So he overhauled the cornerback room in a way where he got veterans. Charvarius Ford is a veteran. He already had one in Kenny Moore. They were going to start Justin Wally, which goes a little bit against this. But one of the big things they liked about him was he came in and picked everything up pretty fast. It doesn't feel like it'll be interesting to see what they do on Sunday, but it feels like they're going to go with Xavier Howard, which maybe this is just me. I don't like that. I don't know if I would play him a starter snaps right away since he hasn't played at all. It's very interesting to me that it seems like that's what they're doing based on what we've talked about. But Xavier Howard coming off of not playing seems like a bad matchup against the Dolphins.
Well, especially since he hasn't been here that long. I mean, I guess, he's a veteran. It's not like he needs to relearn the position or anything. And he probably has some experience with what Anarumo's doing because they were together with the Dolphins. But I mean, yeah, and it could go either way. Was he, is the year off help because he's well rested and fresh and all that stuff? Or does the year off hurt because it was the year off and no one wanted to sign him? So it's a really interesting point. I mean, and they've gone with a guy he knows in Joe Bacci at the weak side linebacker spot, who's never really played much defense before. He's been mostly a special teamer. Obviously they had Jalen Carlies, who wasn't able to stay on the field, hasn't been able to stay on the field. I guess do you see that anywhere else on defense, or is it just the defensive secondary, or is it just a secondary that you see that?
It's the secondary more so than anything else where I think he wants the experience, because at linebacker, if it mattered that much, they would have signed Jermaine Pratt when he was available.
that's fair.
They didn't have necessarily great options, but there were options to get guys who have more than, I think Chad Muma had like 600 odd snaps in his career defensively, and he's second behind Zaire Franklin. Like, but at the same time, I asked Anarumo yesterday about both Xavier Howard and Jalen Jones, and he really likes Xavier Howard. First of all, they have a relationship. They've been texting and calling each other all summer essentially. He really likes Xavier Howard, but his answer on Jones was kind of just, we'll see. He's a guy who's played a lot of snaps. He hasn't really seen him on the field yet because of an offseason injury and the hamstring injury, but I don't know. It wasn't a very enthusiastic answer. And the more I think about it, like, Jalen Jones has played 1,932 snaps defensively in the NFL in his first 2 years. He's a legitimate starting corner in the NFL. You know, his numbers last year were at the very least solid, 80 quarterback rating, that kind of thing. He's a battler. He's maybe not like a top-end guy, but he's a starter in the NFL. And it just doesn't feel like him coming off of the hamstring is going to get a lot of snaps on Sunday. And that's surprising to me. It doesn't feel like it's a matchup thing. It feels like it's a Xavier Howard's in front of him. I'm surprised. It's going to be interesting to see how Xavier Howard matches up. That's a fast Dolphins team. Like, you can put Charvarius Ward on one of them, but on one of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but Howard has to cover the other one. Like, he's getting thrown right in the deep end as far as speed.
Oh, let's talk about the Dolphins, and obviously an interesting matchup for the opener, in part for some of the reasons you're saying. They have the most accurate. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa led the NFL in completion percentage last year. They like to get the ball out quick. That's something the Colts have struggled with. What are your thoughts? What are you wanting to see in this first game?
Well, to me, it's a very interesting matchup because in theory, it's a good test of the difference in the defenses. So teams like this, teams that Tagovailoa has led the NFL in fastest snap to throw time 2 seasons in a row. He was at 2.36 in 23. He was at 2.42 last season. He takes less time with the ball in his hands in the pocket than literally any other quarterback in the NFL. In the past, when the Colts defense has played that in previous schemes, they have not been able to get home. They haven't had the corners to do it. They play zones where they drop off, and it gives guys quick options to throw. This has been a bad matchup for them. This has been high completions. Going back to Matt Eberflus, it wasn't just Gus Bradley's defenses. It was Matt Eberflus's defenses too. When guys got the ball, when they played quarterbacks who get the ball out of their hands quickly, it often went poorly for them. And Anarumo, in theory, was brought in to fix this defense and make it a little bit different than that, and to take away what an opposing offense wants to do. I want to see him do it. I want to see him do it because there are ways to make these guys hold the ball. Otherwise everyone would play that way. There are ways to make it work. Press coverage is probably one of them. Disguise is another one. This is another big part of Anarumo's thing. Is he's supposed to disguise his coverages, make it hard for the quarterback to read. In theory, that should make him hold it because he doesn't know where to go with it. But yeah, they overhauled the secondary. They're playing more press. It just feels like this is a good opening game to see, can Lou Anarumo actually do what he was hired to do, which is make this defense able to play against anybody. The previous defenses, there were very clear archetypes of what types of offenses they struggled with. And this Dolphins team is one of them. It'll be interesting to see if Anarumo has found an answer to some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins, the rest of the NFL seemed to catch up to the Dolphins in the second half of last year, so that'll be interesting to watch. I was in favor of this as a move. I mean, we've talked about this before. You and Nate Adkins had talked about this, obviously, when Lou Anarumo was hired. You got to do something different. You can't. I mean, it wasn't working. And look, the Cincinnati defense was not good last year. So maybe this blows up in their face. But this is I much prefer them taking a chance here and trying something different, trying to do something that, as you said, makes the offense react to you rather than what they were doing before, which is just try to keep it simple, and the offense knows what's coming.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's the Colts trying to catch up to where defense has gone in the NFL. The sort of static schemes. Both Gus Bradley and Matt Eberflus would tell you, they mixed up their coverages. They did different stuff. Neither one of those guys is really known for that, though. That especially like Gus Bradley's stated philosophy is simpler is better. The more guys know, the faster they play. And so I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible while trying to do some other stuff. It hasn't really worked for them necessarily. It hasn't. Well, it didn't work at all. They really bottomed out on defense. Now, some of that is the fact that they never gave Gus Bradley corners like they did, like they gave Lou Anarumo corners this offseason. But NFL defense has moved towards more complex, more shifting, more motion, more disguise. I was getting a text message from another NFL writer earlier this week about the Arizona Cardinals and how weird their secondary is, because essentially they line up in a bunch of places that you wouldn't expect, and they don't declare where they're going until well into the snap. And whereas like Gus Bradley, Matt Eberflus was more like, we're going to show, what we're going to do. We're just going to try to do it better than you. Anarumo built his reputation on making quarterbacks think. So, it's one of those things that I think they needed to modernize like this. Whether or not it works is going to come down somewhat to personnel. Like, no defense. That's the answer for Lou Anarumo last season. Is like most people say the Bengals didn't give him enough. Well, there are ways that this Colts defense could not have enough. We've already mentioned some of them. Their outside corner spot opposite Charvarius Ward, they're counting on a 32-year-old who didn't play last year, an undrafted rookie, and then Jalen Jones, who for some reason the coaching staff isn't ready to stick with yet. Although I think that's a mistake given what he's shown. But that seems to be where they are. Maybe it'll be different on Sunday. Maybe it'll be more of a rotation. They don't have a proven weak side linebacker. Joe Bacci looked good in camp. We'll see if he can do the Zaire Franklin thing where you become an actual starter halfway through your career. And then, the defensive line is really dependent on Laiatu Latu taking the next step as an edge rusher. If he does not do that, if he is more of a rotational type player, then it's pretty much the defensive line we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years, where it's DeForest Buckner and a bunch of solid but not difference-making guys. Like that could be a recipe for more pain on the defensive side of the ball. From a schematic standpoint, though, I think they had to do this. They had to modernize in an NFL where offensive coordinators know how to attack every coverage. The hard part for offensive coordinators is when they don't know what you're going to do and you make it difficult on them as play callers. And the Colts haven't been doing that for a while. That's what Anarumo is known for doing.
You just referenced this, but the Dolphins offense is known as much for running the ball as throwing it. We're going to find out if this scheme works against a team that wants to run the ball too, and if they've got the personnel to stand up to it.
Yeah, I am pretty interested in how this defense looks against the run. There were some signs in training camp that they might still be a little bit ill-suited on that side of the ball. When you have Grover Stewart on the field, I think you're probably in good shape. They have a lot of defensive ends who are bigger. In theory, those guys should be better at playing the run than the smaller, faster guys. But we got to see them do it. This is a team that was awful against the run to start last season. It hamstrung the defense for the rest of the year. They were kind of always chasing that because they messed up against the run, had to make changes, didn't work. They ended up giving up more on the other end. It's going to be interesting to see if they can stop the run well. In theory, it's a team that should be able to stop the run because they've got Grover Stewart. They've got DeForest Buckner. They've got, like I said, they've got big defensive ends. Zaire Franklin is a tackling type. But then you've got the weak side Nick Cross actually is probably better against the run than he is against the downfield passing game. He's at his best coming forward. The Bengals' numbers last year, though, were 16th in the NFL in yards per carry allowed and 19th in rushing yards per game. And I have questions about the defensive tackle depth for this times when Grover Stewart's not out there, when DeForest Buckner's not out there, which has been a problem for them for a long time. So I'm curious because the Dolphins are going to test that, and they're going to test them horizontally, which in some ways I think the Colts secondary should be set up better to handle that. You have Cross, you have Kenny Moore, who's still a very good tackler as far as we, until he's proven otherwise, he's a very good tackler. And then I think Cam Bynum is another player who you feel like his versatility playing in the box helps you. We're going to see how this goes. Can they stop the run? Can they do it when Grover Stewart's not on the field? Is a big one to me. It's interesting because the Dolphins can do that, and then they can also go deep on you.
Let's talk a little about the offense. Obviously, that all come back to the quarterback, no matter how we try to spin it. How permanent are our opinions on Daniel Jones based on what happens in this game? If he's really good, are you optimistic? If he's terrible, or should we just not cover the team this year?
I think a lot of people would tell you that we should just not cover the team this year.
The poll seems to indicate that.
If he's bad, the like that goes back to the first question of where the fan base's head's at. It's not in a good place. I would say this. I think from an offensive standpoint, if he can do the Alex Smith thing, which is that's the new answer for all of the quarterback questions. What are you hoping Anthony Richardson can do? Well, we hope he's like Alex Smith, that he can overcome multiple benchings. What do you want Daniel Jones to do? We want him to be Alex Smith in Kansas City. If he can actually be Alex Smith in Kansas City, where he's not making many mistakes, he's completing a lot of passes, he's not super dynamic, but he's keeping the offense moving. I think this team has a chance offensively because they do have talent in the skill positions. They have Jonathan Taylor. They should be good at running the ball. Jones gives you a little bit of a wrinkle with the way he can run the football. The question is, can he do that? We know he can complete passes. His history in the NFL says he can complete passes. He's had 2 seasons where he's been over 67%, but for very, very little reward. Very, very low yards per attempt, not super high touchdown numbers. Can he really do it in a way that is sustainable for this offense is a big question. And he's going to he should be able to do it this week. The Dolphins, again, there's a piece of looking at an opener where there's always at least 2 games in the NFL during week 1 that the result actually means nothing for the NFL. I think about that year the Packers opened with the Saints, and Jameis Winston threw for 11 touchdown passes, and the Packers got blown out. And then the Saints
only 9 interceptions, I think, in that one.
And then the Saints were bad, and the Packers were great. And it was that was just the opener. So there is the element of that happening. But on paper, as long as the Colts can block the Dolphins, it should be a good week for Daniel Jones. This is a Dolphins team that's going to rely on Jack Jones at corner, Storm Duck on the outside. That's a real name. That's not
Storm Duck, yep.
That's not a superhero. Storm Duck would be a good superhero.
Yeah, well, would it? What's
yes.
Storm's powers?
Clearly, he's a duck he's like a duck who can create storms. He's like a cross between Storm from the X-Men and the Howard Duck guy that's in the back end of Marvel movies.
Okay.
I'm thinking he's better in the cartoon space.
I'm thinking he's like a partner with Squirrel Girl or something like that.
Well, that's the thing, though.
Opposed to an Avenger or something.
That's the thing, though, is there are so many random small characters in comic books. Storm Duck could definitely be somewhere in one of these things. He could, or he could be a villain. Crypto in the next Superman movie. Crypto could take down Storm Duck.
How about Duck Storm? I think works better, but I think I like Duck Storm better. And I will also say the omnipotent thing gets old, so I'm all for lower level. Sort of secondary characters. I think those have more character and fun, but this is not a Marvel superhero podcast, and we don't want to get started on Yoda and Star Wars. So
I'm gonna get it out of you. I'm gonna get it out of you before we have a replacement.
But
I'm gonna make you go. I'm gonna make you go viral with your Star Wars takes and get everybody upset at you. But yes, we're talking about the Dolphins. It's a secondary that seems gettable, and it feels like the Dolphins' only answer to that is we're gonna rush the passer really well. So if Jones gets the ball out of his hands quickly, if the Colts protect well, he should have chances to have a big game offensively. I think it's going to take a long time before fans are really on board with it. I think he's got to be like 5-3 or something before people are even like sort of in on it.
Like Jacoby Brissett, 5-2 MVP candidate, his in 2019. Everyone remember that?
I actually think that's a good example, because I think even if they were 5-3, everyone would probably correctly be skeptical of it. So like Daniel Jones probably doesn't have a chance to sway public opinion firmly onto his side until like December.
And it's also worth noting that Alex Smith was pretty good with the 49ers his last 2 years there, had increased his yards per attempt and things like that before he got to Kansas City. So, but he did get benched twice and then, play much better. Again, if Alex Smith is your goal, in the AFC with what's prime Alex Smith? Where's he ranked among quarterbacks in the current AFC? It's, middle of the pack. So,
Oh, I mean, he's, yeah. Well, like here's his sort of his last season in Kansas City before getting traded to Washington, and Kansas City gets Mahomes. 67.5 completion percentage, 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 5 picks. Yards per attempt, 8 that year. Wow.
Led the average yards per attempt. They got Pro Football Reference has an advanced metric that is sort of a better version of yards per attempt, and he led the NFL in that.
8 is not representative though of his whole time in Kansas City, because it was before that it was 7-2, 7-4, 7, 6.5. So that's more like it. But that's his best season, and really most of his seasons in Kansas City were more like 65-ish% completions, 3,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 6 or 7 interceptions. Rating in like the mid to low 90s.
And you take that if you're the Colts after what you've been through. There's no doubt. I don't think Daniel Jones has that in him, but I have zero issues if I'm sure Daniel watches the podcast, and if he wants to prove me wrong, I have zero issues with that. And the other thing is Alex Smith is one of those guys that people kind of put down, but it's like he made several Pro Bowls. I mean, he was a really good NFL quarterback. He wasn't going to win, and he wasn't going to carry you to a Super Bowl, but he was not a bad player. So
the funny thing about Ballard bringing up Alex Smith, and we might have talked about this on the last podcast. A lot has happened since then. It's pretty hard to remember all of it. But back on the early iterations of the Cover-2 podcast with myself and Jim Aiello, we advocated for the Colts to find their Alex Smith, which is, a solid starter who can keep a good roster in the playoffs. Again, I have some questions about whether or not this is a good roster. We'll find out. But a solid starter who can keep you in the playoffs and keep you successful while you wait for the right quarterback to come along. Because that's really what Alex Smith was for the Chiefs. He kept a good roster in the playoffs, winning the division. At that time, the AFC West was bad. Winning the division and giving them chances in the playoffs, even though they ultimately came to nothing. They looked for the right quarterback. And then once they found the right quarterback, they pounced. That I thought, and Jim thought, was the best sort of scenario for the Colts moving forward. We're kind of past that point now. Or it feels like we're past that point, because it feels like there's so much pressure on this regime. Can you put that genie back in the bottle? I don't know. Like, there was a question today in the Colts media room, like, what is the ceiling for this Jones thing? if they win the division, say they win the division. Now, I want to say this real quick because people always think of this as a prediction. This is not a prediction. This is a hypothetical. Say they win the division. He gives you an Alex Smithish type season. You sign Smith to something around like the Darnold deal where it's 3 years. It feels expensive, but it's not actually that expensive because, it's the quarterbacks, the really good quarterbacks get paid like $60 million now. And you use those years to try to look for another new quarterback. Are you okay with that?
I don't know. So, but I don't know what the other answer is because you're going to be too good. If he has if Jones has an Alex Smith season, you're going to be too good to draft a quarterback. Your draft position is not going to be good enough. So
you say that, but the Chiefs just traded up.
Yeah. Okay. Let me know when Ballard does that.
That's fair. That's fair. And that's a pretty big hole in the plan is that he doesn't trade up. But, if they're trying to follow that Chiefs example, can you put the genie back in the bottle with the fan base? I don't know. I really don't. I really don't know. I don't know what would happen. I don't know what would happen if they won the division.
It's not the fan base; it's the ownership. But if they win the division, I think you got to bring them back. And
again, this is not a prediction. We are going absolute best case scenario hypothetical here.
And yeah, but you're right though. If they win the division, what do you do? I mean, you got to bring them back. And is the fan base going to be excited about that? So hey, let's see what happens. That would be a great season to cover and to write about. So
for those wondering what my actual prediction was, Nat made me against my will because I'm very bad at this, and I predicted 7-10. That's what I actually think is going to happen. I actually think it's not going to work, and they're going to have a mediocre season, and it probably leads to change at the end of the season. That's what I actually think is going to happen. Just want to say that after all this talk about what's the best case hypothetical, my actual prediction is that it's not going to go that well, but that's what I think. But if in a hypothetical world where it works out for them, that's what I think it looks like.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked that closely at it, but I'm confident saying that my prediction would be 5-12. I think I picked 5-12 last year, and that didn't work out so well though. So,
there's some of my game by game prediction stuff is dicey. It is. Like I have them win the opener. We all know the Colts can't win openers. I at some point I think in the last couple of years I just decided I was going to keep picking it until they actually win one. Just I know you're supposed to bet with the streak, but I'm going to bet against the streak predictions wise. And I think the Houston one at the end is probably a dicey pick. There's probably some other ones in there. 5 wins, 7 wins, 6 wins, honestly even 8 wins. They're all the same to me. I think all of them say the same thing.
And of course, speaking of openers, we'll close with the opener since I did a bunch of research on it. They have not won an opener since 2013. I looked deep into this. Based on the spreads, there is a 0.06% chance that the Colts would not win. They did tie. They tied Houston as a 7-point favorite in 2022, I believe. They also lost as a 7-point favorite to Jacksonville in 2020, and that was Jacksonville's only win of the season. So this goes beyond math. So I was trying to dig deep, and I did discover that of teams with 11, of teams who have played in 11 or more openers, I got to start with 11 because the Dayton something or others in the 30s went 6-3-1. In openers before they folded or moved on or whatever. The Baltimore Colts at 21-10 have the best winning percentage in openers in NFL history. And the team with the worst winning percentage in openers is the Indianapolis Colts. There are, I can't remember how many teams, there's 7 teams or something like that, or 6 teams that have lost or have not won at least 7 openers in a row. And the Colts are on there twice, starting in 1984, which happens to be the year that they moved in the middle of the night from Baltimore to Indianapolis. And of course, their current active streak. They don't have the longest streak. Of course, the Cleveland Browns have the longest streak. The Colts are currently at 11 winless openers in a row. The Browns went for 13 years. Are you midnight move curse, or do you have some other logical explanation for why this team can't win an opener? This franchise can't win an opener right now.
I like the curse. Let's go with the curse. We got to go with the curse. I am as listeners of this podcast know, and as you know, I am a baseball guy. Baseball is a superstitious sport. It's not a little stitious. It's superstitious. It's very superstitious sport. Numbers can't explain this, and therefore I think a curse is the best explanation. A midnight move curse. I mean, that is the sort of thing that could curse a team.
And it is a 0.06% chance of something happening is roughly equivalent to the odds of getting struck by lightning in a thunderstorm. So that tells you how odd this is. And you bring up the Brewers, so we should close with the question I've asked you before, but I'd like to be as public with as possible. Is it more disappointing when the Brewers are going to lose in the first round of the playoffs this year when they've been good all year than all those years they lost in the first round when they weren't quite this good?
I'm really I keep telling you it's still up in the air, but I don't think they're going to play in the first round. Can't lose if you don't play.
The first round that they have to play in is what we're talking about here.
The last time that they didn't have to play in the first round, they made it to Game 7 of the NLCS. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that if they can actually skip the first round entirely, that whatever bad juju they have in that round is gone.
They can then lose in the semifinals again. That's an interesting.
That would be better than lose. I'll tell you what all of this is better than. All of this is better than being 22 years old before they make the playoffs.
I remember I'm a little bit older than you. I grew up. I was like 82. I was 10 years old, so very familiar with the Harvey Wallbangers and what they did to the Red Sox when the Red Sox were mediocre every year growing up in Boston. So
people disagree with me on this, and I actually think this is relevant to the Colts, which makes it a good place to end the podcast. I would much rather my team be the Alex Smith Chiefs than basically all iterations of the Jacksonville Jaguars that don't involve Mark Brunell. I would much rather my team be making the playoffs and be relevant, even if I'm going to lose in the playoffs, than to be completely destitute. And I know a lot of people disagree with me because in the NFL, that means you get the number one pick. But the number one pick does not work out a lot of the time.
Yeah,
it is no guarantee of anything. I would much rather be relevant and have my team winning, even if it's just in the regular season, than where – like I was as a baseball fan growing up, where like the postseason, it wasn't even a thought. It was just like I hope they have 2 All-Stars. That's a terrible place to be. It's so much worse than when your team is always in the mix. Like losing in the playoffs is more painful, yes, but it's a better pain. It's a better pain than being numb to your team's awfulness.
Yeah, it's better than rooting for the Ryan Braun. What's his name? Fielder Brewers with no pitching. So
well, like even that team made the playoffs. It's way better than rooting for the Richie Sexson, Jeff Jenkins Brewers.
Oh yeah, a very good point. Yeah.
Or watching them just waste Ben Sheets' entire career where he never pitched in a playoff game. You know, like it's way better to me. And like I said, Colts fans can disagree with me on this. I don't actually think the Colts fit this because they haven't been to the playoffs in 4 years. They're trending more towards the 90s Brewers than they are the like post 2008 Brewers. I would much rather have a team that's in the mix and loses in the playoffs than I would have a team that's absolutely destitute. Because yes, some teams come out of it. Lots of teams don't. Some franchises have been there basically their entire existence.
We will end it there, except adding Pete Vukovich, perhaps the worst Cy Young winner of all time, but maybe the best character athlete in a movie of all time in Major League. So, again, like and subscribe. We'll be back next week. We appreciate you all joining us here on YouTube Live. And, of course, you can watch the full recording once we get posted. Thank you.
Also, the post-game pod with the categories is coming up. It was coming up on Sunday.
We're looking forward to that.
Nat's got to get ready for the categories.
Thank you all.